San Diego County Code of Regulatory Ordinances to restrict target shooting near Donahoe Mountain in the Dulzura area. There are 12 requests to speak on this item, 3 in favor, 9 in opposition.
Thank you very much. Holly Crawford will present our report this morning.
Good morning, Chairwoman Gaspar and members of the board. I'm going to provide an overview of agenda item number 1, which would revise the county's shooting ordinance to restrict target shooting on 2 portions of Bureau of Land Management property near Dulzura in East County. This item is based on board direction from your June 26th meeting. At that time, the board directed the Chief Administrative Officer to work with the Bureau of Land Management, the Sheriff's Department, and affected residents in the Donahoe Mountain area of Dulzura to define the boundaries of what is known as the Donahoe Flats area, to draft an ordinance that would restrict shooting there year-round, and to return to the board within 120 days. Fire and public safety concerns in the area are driving this item. The public safety group took the lead on the process of defining the boundaries by bringing together the Bureau of Land Management, the Sheriff's Department, and affected residents. We also received feedback from those concerned with the proposed closure. We met with agency representatives in July. Then in August, county staff, the Bureau of Land Management, and the Sheriff's Department spent a few hours with a group of residents touring the areas with a history of fire and public safety concerns related to target shooting. In August and September, we also reached out to the nearby South Bay Rod and Gun Club and the Dulzura Fire Safe Council. It's important to note a few exceptions as part of this proposed closure. First, shooting at legal game or wildlife would continue to be allowed in these areas. And second, the use of firearms for defense of person or property would also still be allowed. Target shooting would still be available on other Bureau of Land Management lands in the county unless specified otherwise. Members of the public can go online to the Bureau of Land Management's website to look up where those locations are. Originally, we looked at using the closest roads as the boundaries to facilitate enforcement, and that was based on the Bureau of Land Management feedback. But after gathering additional feedback from the Rod and Gun Club members and others, we focused the boundaries on just those known for target shooting areas and with a history of fire and public safety issues. The boundaries lie completely within 2 portions of Bureau of Land Management federal land. No private property is in the proposed closure areas. You can see from this map, the northern closure area sits along State Route 94, Campo Road, and includes a target shooting spot known as Pink Gate. On this map, it is the northern area with red diagonal stripes. A significant wildfire broke out there on May 20th, 2017, called the Gate Fire. The dark brown area that's outlined in red shows the perimeter of the Gate Fire. Where the dark brown and red stripes overlap is where that fire started. The fire grew to more than 2,000 acres. We estimate that at least 300 to 500 people were forced to evacuate. The American Red Cross opened a shelter at Otay Ranch High School. The emergency response included 858 fire personnel, 4 helicopters, 7 air tankers, and firefighters fully contained the fire 3 days after it began. Following an investigation, the cause of the fire was found to be target shooting. 4 people were charged and pled guilty in federal court. CAL FIRE recently sent a letter of demand to those responsible, seeking recovery of more than $2.3 million in taxpayer funds that it cost to fight the fire. CAL FIRE reports there have been 10 fires caused by shooting in 10 years in the Otay-Dulzura area. The southern closure area is also in red diagonal stripes at the bottom right. It sits to the west of Marone Valley Road and includes another known target shooting area known as Donahoe Flats. This map was produced by CAL FIRE and the County Fire Authority. It shows that the proposed closure areas in red stripes falls almost entirely within very high fire hazard severity zones, which is indicated in green. These are the highest level of hazard possible, and they represent a year-round fire risk. Currently, the Bureau of Land Management closes its San Diego property during a portion of the year due to high fire hazard. This past year's closure was not lifted until February of 2018, and then went into effect again in May of 2018. So shooting was only allowed for 2 months in this area. CAL FIRE also puts burn restrictions in place, which also went into effect in May due to the high fire risk. The agencies worked together when putting their closures in effect. Bureau of Land Management informs us they do not have the resources to do highly localized street-by-street closures and that fuel loads do not change on a week-to-week basis. Sheriff's Department data shows that deputies have responded to 309 gun, weapon, and shooting-related calls in this immediate area over the past 8 years. Residents who live nearby report that gunfire from target shooters flies near their homes and has struck their windows. They're very worried about their personal safety. We believe that these boundaries offer a reasonable compromise. So the recommendations before you today are to approve the first reading of the proposed code amendment, adding a section that restricts target shooting near Donahoe Mountain, which is near Del Zura, and to submit the ordinance for further board consideration at a second reading. I'm joined today by CAL FIRE Deputy Chief Dave Nissen and Sheriff's Department Lieutenant Damon Blankenbaker. This concludes my presentation, subject to your board's questions.
Thank you. Not seeing any preliminary questions. I know we have a number of speakers wishing to address the board. If we could call them forward, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'll call forward the speakers in favor: Robin Brailsford, Clifford Keller, and Nick Alexander. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the audio record.
Thank you, board members. I want to have a special thanks to Diane Jacob, who's experienced this problem firsthand, and she has a lot of courage and common sense, so we're very thankful for her.
Sir, if you could please state your name for the audio record.
Sorry, Wick Alexander. I live at 1116 Marone Valley Road in Del Zura. I also want to extend my thanks to Sheriff Leos. Sheriff Leos was the first law enforcement officer to suggest an ordinance. We had over eight years of meetings at Diane Jacobs' office in El Cajon, over 32 meetings where all the entities, all the law enforcement, Border Patrol, BLM, and sheriffs all sat down in agreement that there was a terrible problem and it needed to be solved. And as you all know, it's easy to identify a problem, but much harder to solve a problem. So what we're here for today is to ask you to consider the following items. Number one, first and foremost, that this is a safety issue, that this ordinance will save lives, that we've been crying for help for 8 years to get this solved, and so that's why we're here today. When the shooters are actively shooting, we're forced to huddle inside. We can't use our property because the bullets are flying by. Number two, the emphasis on fire cannot be overstated. My calculations are that there's been over 35 fires caused by shooters from 2004 to the present, 2018. And then I brought a list of things for your consideration as well, that I have the CAL FIRE response to look at. I also have a study that was done by Scripps talking about the dry year-round conditions and some of their solutions. I have an article that shows that the shooting on BLM land is a national issue, not just a local issue. And I also brought the copy of the two ordinances that were first draft and second draft for you to look at. And then finally, I just want to emphasize the Gate Fire. It's actually a Wikipedia entry. And remember that a Chula Vista police officer who was directing traffic near the Gate Fire was struck by a vehicle and seriously injured as a result. So keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You can leave those with our deputy clerk behind you.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, my name's Cliff Keller.
Hi, Cliff. If you have anything, you can give
I
it to
have
the
some
deputy clerk.
items for you.
Perfect. The deputy clerk right behind you. If you have any materials you would like distributed to the board. Thanks. Good
I
morning.
would, and in fact, there's some maps there I'd like you to be able to reference. My name's Cliff Keller, a landowner in Dulzura and a resident of Encinitas. And I've owned land in that area for many years. My parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents were avid hunters in that area, believe it or not. So thank you for hearing our concerns today. As Wick mentioned, we've had quite a few meetings with Supervisor Jacob. Thank you very much, with the BLM, Sheriff's Department, Border Patrol, and CAL FIRE, and everybody's been very supportive, and everybody's been in agreement on this issue. My handout that you'll see shows an aerial photo as Exhibit 1, which is just the second page on there, that shows yellow circles where the most common shooting takes place. And from the yellow circles, you'll see yellow arrows going in the direction they're shooting and where their typical targets are. And you can see the targets if you go out there and visit. It's old appliances and mannequins and whatever else is put up that day. The green arrows are the most significant things. There you can see a 1 mile range from each of those shooting spots in the general direction of where they're shooting. Now you may ask, why do I have a mile on there? Notice on Exhibit 3, you'll see a chart there for a common hunting website that shows shooting distances of the most common rifles. 16 out of 17 rifles have a range of greater than a mile. In fact, 9 out of 17 of the most common rifles have a range of 2 miles. And as you can see from the direction they're shooting and where those green arrows are going, it's going over Community Building Road, nearly every residence in Dulzura. It's going over Marone Valley Road, which is a major thoroughfare for visitors, customers, and especially Border Patrol agents. Hey, amazingly, 1 mile away is State Highway 94. That's all within range of these shooters. So it's no surprise we hear the chilling sound of bullets flying through our properties. It's quite easy to imagine. And there's a clear risk that somebody's going to get shot. And when that happens, we're not going to be surprised. We've been talking about this for 8 years. I think the only person who will be surprised, really, will be the shooter, because the shooters there are not doing this out of maliciousness. When you're back there shooting, you don't see that there's residences and roads in that direction. There's a rise there that catches most of the bullets, but not all of the bullets. The bullets that are flying over that rise are the ones we're hearing.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments today.
Thank you very
and the
much.
materials provided. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Robin Brailsford. I live in Dulzura, and I have a business there as well. I'm here basically representing 2 groups, my neighbors, many of whom are elderly or have vehicles that don't work so well, or animals that they had to take care of this morning, so they're not here. One of them is actually Carolyn Scheckler, who I know Diane Jacobs knows very well. And I want to point out that this mural right here is a mural of Dulzura, and Carolyn Scheckler's mother-in-law, Hazel Scheckler, is actually one of the people who painted this mural. So Dulzura actually means sweetness, and it's sweetness from honey. And if you look at all the happy people doing the wonderful East County things up there, that was what Hazel Scheckler saw and what we're here to protect. So I think a big thing is there are there's a lot of animosity about an issue like this, but I want to point out that this is a personal issue for us, not a political issue. We are literally worried about our safety and the safety of our neighbors. The society and the community in Dulzura changes. There's now a group called ACE, which is American Conservation Experience, which has taken over the Family Care Foundation at the end of the road. And they bring in groups of kids who are sort of like an AmeriCorps group to take care of trails elsewhere, and they come here for reprieve. They are now camping in the land exactly that we're talking about. We see groups of those kids going out all the time, and those are new people not used to being here. The other thing I want to represent, too, is the business community, and I'll hand around a show at the California Center for the Arts, which Wick and I are part of right now, and that when there's a fire out there, we can be shut down from between 30 days to, from 1 day to 30 days. 30 days with no power and no access to your place of business is a severe handicap for us. Leon Herzog, who recently had a stroke, and so that's why he's not here today, he told me that it costs him $6,000 a day when there's a fire and there's no access to Dulzura. So what we're asking for is safety first, no bullets in the region right around us. And I also want to point out that when people are shooting in these areas, nobody else can be hiking out there, nobody can be riding their horse, nobody can be riding their mountain bike. So we're just looking for one area right near our houses, which we think will make it much more safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'll call for the speakers in opposition. I'll call for the first 5, and you may come to the podium in any order. Michael Costello, Mike Johnson, Brent McAlisa, John Sivers, and Mark Shinto.
Don't be shy. You can actually queue up a little bit closer, too, so it doesn't take so long to walk forward. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, supervisors. I am indeed Michael Costello. On the date in question of the gate fire, I was, in fact, driving by that gate by the BLM land at 6:45 in the morning. 2 things struck me immediately. First, the annuals, which had grown up as a result of the rainy season, had all desiccated. That is, they died and dried out. The humidity was very low. The temperature was warm and getting warmer. The conditions to all of us here in California that we recognize, this is the red flag season, and we have to be careful with things that spark or cause sparks. The other thing that struck me is there was no sign saying the area was closed to motorcycles, to welding torches, to shooting, whatever. Whoever was supposed to be managing this area was asleep at the switch. Simply, it was mismanaged. Here in California, we live here because of recreational outdoor activities. The glider port is under periodic threat to be closed. One of the most iconic glider ports in the country. Our golf courses are continually being closed. Motorcycle trails, horseback riding trails, mountain bike riding trails. Everything seems to be more and more closed and more restricted. But why do we live here in Southern California? Because of outdoors. I respectfully request to you, submit to you that is, that this is a problem of management, not closure, but keep our opportunities for recreation open. The gate fire should have never happened. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning that I'm going out to that part of the county, and I check the weather. It's right there. Is it going to be red flag conditions? What will it be out there? You can look, and it's simply a matter of management. As far as safety of bullets flying here and there, okay, please identify safe areas to shoot, safe backstops, safe lanes, and you solve it. I had 5 years in the Army. I've been shooting all my life since I was a Boy Scout. That was 1959. I've never seen an accident. Probably millions of rounds of ammunition have been fired around me. I have never seen an accident. All you have to do is manage it properly. Safe lanes, safe backstops, check the weather. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, supervisors. My name is John Sivers. I am the Chief Financial Officer and the Business Manager for South Bay Rod and Gun Club. Initially, we were going to be included in this ordinance. We appreciate Supervisor Jacobs' office and the County Administrative Officer to reduce the areas to where we are no longer personally involved in this. We do own 627 acres in the Dulzura area where we operate our shooting range. We have over 3,000 plus members. This issue of closure, we have as much skin in the game as any other resident out there. We do not want to see our buildings or our infrastructure burned by wildfires. If we felt that this few months that the BLM land is open to shooting was going to pose a significant fire danger, we would be right here with everybody else demanding the closure. We do not believe that to be the case. As the first speaker indicated, we believe that a tighter management and closure of BLM land to shooting when the fire danger is truly high is the proper solution here, not a blanket 12-month year-round closure. That seems excessive. A lot of people that go out to the BLM land to shoot, eventually if they don't like that, or when it is closed, they will maybe come down and join our club. But a lot of our club members, we only have ranges that go out to 300 yards. And if people want to shoot at distances beyond 300 yards, one of the few places they can do that is over on the BLM land. So it would be a disservice to them to do that. If you do close down these areas, especially the Pink Gate area, which is right up on Highway 94, you are not going to solve the problem, you're simply going to chase it somewhere else. And what you are going to do is push people into more remote areas where they will still do their target shooting. And the sheriff's department, they drive past 94 many times a day in their normal course of duties. They can observe that area of the Pink Gate. If you push these people out somewhere else, you're going to push them further away from the eyes of law enforcement. So we ask you to please not close this area. We believe that the public has the right to enjoy the BLM land, just as the horseback riding people, archery people, hiking people, and everybody else. We believe target shooters should be able to. As you've heard today from county's report, there's only a very short window during the year when this land is open for shooting. If it needs to be adjusted to more clearly fit with red flag warnings, we support that idea, but we are opposed to the permanent closure of this land. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Mike Johnson. I'm the executive director of SD Must. We're a local nonprofit here in San Diego. The gate fire could have been trash from campers, off-roaders, everybody. Months before the gate fire, we reached out to the BLM, CAL FIRE, whoever would listen, and we said, this area is going to burn. If it's not from shooters, it's going to be from a car or off-roaders. We know the area. I guarantee you, I've spent more time in these areas than probably everybody in this room. I'm out there cleaning up all the time, and we have hundreds of volunteers that help us do this. We reached out before the gate fire and told them it was going to burn, and we said, you know what, you need to do a control burn, or we had 200 volunteers lined up for free. We were going to cut the grass at Pink Gate to mitigate the fire danger because we knew it was a fire danger. And if you own property out in East County, everybody tells you, you need to make fire breaks. You need to mitigate fire danger. Why wouldn't you do it in an area that people are constantly using? As far as the safety committee or whatever saying they consulted with BLM, they said they talked to the ranger that's out there. But I talked to the fuel specialist, the fire specialist with BLM. They weren't even aware this meeting was taking place. They were not consulted. They were consulted with a letter that they received in June, and I think they responded saying that, well, it's public land, we're supposed to create access for that for everybody. Saying that there's numerous parcels of BLM land still available is a lie. The area, I'm giving you guys some maps. I circled the area that you want to close. That makes up almost half of the available shooting area in San Diego County. The rest of it it's national parks, national forests, wildlife refuge, military reservations, several other government organizations run it, but you can't shoot on any of that, not target shooting. And the little bit of BLM that's left, it's behind closed locked forestry gates that you can't get access to. They're inaccessible because they're on the top of mountains, or they're behind private property, which you can't cross to go to BLM land. I calculated there's 0.006% of public land in San Diego County is actually open to target shooting. and you're proposing to take away about half of that. We have tens of thousands of shooters that use this area annually, including people of all ages, military, genders, cultures, backgrounds, and a lot of people with disabilities that can't shoot indoors because they have lung problems or hearing problems. Going outdoor to shoot for free, or if they're a lot of times they're on fixed incomes, they can't afford to go to indoor ranges. So I don't agree with you closing this land. It's not fair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
My name is Brent McAleese. I'm just here as a private individual. I'm a gun owner, so I'm taking a little bit different tack with this. I've been to a couple of meetings at Del Mar Fair Board and the closure with the gun show there. And it's pretty much was a dog and pony show that, yeah, we'll listen to the opposition, but we're going to close it regardless. I went to a community event this last week, and it was on gun violence, and with the attitude and the opinions expressed there, it was pretty much another generation of young black men who are going to be facing a bleak future because they're not going to be solving the problem, what they were coming up with. And now I'm looking at this, I'm backing up a little bit, and to me, it's not so much it's a shooting issue or not. To me, it's just another jab at gun owners. This state, for the last 20 years or so, have been treating gun owners as a second-class citizen. If gun owners were black, and this is the 1950s, we'd be calling these Jim Crow laws. Now we've had, 309 complaints of people on the shooting range over the last 8 years. Well, how many complaints, how many times have deputies been called out to Dozura or Acumba over that time frame? How many people have died from shooting out there? Now, how many people may have died from going out there all terrain vehicles or hiking and getting lost? So, looking at this as phrasing it as we either keep the whole thing open or close it completely. Has anybody ever looked at developing it into a shooting range with shooting lanes that do not point towards private residents out there, but proper backstops with all the vegetation that could burn removed? Has that ever been considered? So that's my proposal. You have a problem here, and I think there could be a solution here, but it doesn't have to be close it down completely. I think you're just going either one way, open it, or keep it closed, and there's a middle ground there. And I'd like to see the board here and teaming up with the BLM officials and seeing what can be done about that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I will call the remaining speakers in opposition: Luis Rezga, Michael Schwartz, Mike St. Clair, and Tina Klippinger.
Hi. Good morning.
My name is Mike St. Clair, a Major Marine Corps retired. I've been a member of the South Bay Rod and Gun Club for over 30 years. If the BLM land is closed to shooting, you're going to see an increase in county residents shooting in unauthorized areas, and this is definitely going to increase the fire risk. I invite all members of the board to come out and see our range. Built by volunteers, it's a safe place to shoot. One of the few places in the county, we have over 3,000 members, and many of whom volunteer their time to safe supervision of the shooting sports. Navy and police from San Diego, the U.S. Navy comes out and uses our range. Closing it would impact, I think, their combat and safety training. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Council. My name is Mark Schnino. I'm a private citizen. I'm here to speak in opposition. A couple of points. I'm going to speak about the NFPA Standard 921, which is the fire standard which guides investigators to determine cause of fire origin. In that standard, and I'm going to paraphrase and shorten it so it's easier for you to understand, they identify different types of ammunition that actually cause fire. One of them is steel-jacketed ammunition, incendiary ammunition, as well as black powder or muzzle-fired ammunition. In the state of California, steel-jacketed ammunition is now considered illegal. It's called armor piercing. So you cannot actually fire that. That's illegal. The second one, which is black powder weapons, they fire a lead projectile, which does not cause fire, and the fire cause, if there is any, would come from the actual weapon itself in the vicinity of the shooter, which would be a moot point at this point. And the third one, the incendiary round is also illegal to be shot by civilians in the state of California. It is not legal. So that leaves two types of ammunition that can be fired in BLM or open area, and that is lead or copper jacketed. And lead and copper is not addressed in NFPA 921. It cannot be investigated as a possible cause. There has been no definitive work or testing done to prove that it does. And it's because the metals are so malleable and so soft that when they do strike something hard like steel or rock, it does not produce enough energy to produce enough heat to spark a fire. So with that being said, I'd like to talk about why I'm here to talk about this. I've been a firefighter for over 22 years. I'm also an active duty service member and a veteran and combat veteran. I've shot in California, Arizona, Texas, tens of thousands of rounds in open area and land, both in the military and as a citizen. I've never seen a fire started or brought about by recreational shooting. In the military I have, yes. Incendiary rounds for sure. Armor-piercing rounds, yes, that does happen on a regular occasion. Camp Pendleton is quite aware. But I do find it kind of ironic that I'm here talking about a particular sport or leisure activity or recreation. It's actually depicted right here on this mural for almost 80 years, a person carrying a firearm and participating in the outdoors. So if this motion passes, it's just another continual creep moving towards more anti-gun agenda. In preparation for today's speaking, I actually did some research and was looking at different periodicals and information about this, and I noticed something very peculiar because I follow gun politics significantly. No mention of gunfire starting fires occurred until after 2008. 2008. And that is because President Obama won his second term, and they switched to pushing for significant, severe gun restrictions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Louis Rezga. Live here in San Diego. Just moved back here because I retired out of the Army. But I'm originally from Orange County, California. A lot of this has been said that I wanted to say. Main thing is, if you close, hopefully you don't close this, because this is a place where people like me want to go out there and enjoy the outdoors. When you go, I don't know if you've ever been out there. This is not a place where criminals assemble. Every time I go out there, I'm surrounded by people like me, military veterans, police officers. I've been out there when there's like multiple police officers from a different agency, active duty military. So it's not a place where criminals assemble. It's a place where we are going to enjoy the outdoors, because there's not very many places we can go and do what we do. And if you would close this, you're taking something that means so much to me and other people just like me that can't be here. There's not enough people. So please reconsider closing this place. We're talking about safety. Yes, let's do the safety thing, lanes. Where if there's actually a home where it's threatened, okay, let's address that. Now, if fire's a big issue, yes, I was in the Army 20 years. We start fires all the time because we use tracers. That's the only way a fire can cause. So if fire's the issue, okay. People that are out there are responsible. If there's a knucklehead or two, they're using tracers, that's what's causing the fires. If there's safety involved, okay, let's make sure people are shooting in the safe direction. But like I said, there's police officers out there doing exactly what we're doing. I feel safe out there because I'm surrounded by ex-military, military, and police officers. This is not a place where, it's not a club. There are people out there drinking, using drugs, creating problems. It's a place where we can enjoy the outdoors. That's my favorite hobby, shooting, hunting, and fishing. Please don't take that away from me. I love this place. San Diego's beautiful. And again, hopefully you reconsider not closing this place. You're taking a lot from me. Just imagine what do you do for fun? What's your hobby? Imagine if someone just took that away from you. Please don't take that away from us. most people out there are decent, law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
My name is Michael Schwartz. I'm the Executive Director for San Diego County Gun Owners, and I thought a lot of these speakers did a fantastic job, so I'm not going to rehash some of the points that that have already been made, but I do want to emphasize, first off, San Diego County Gun Owners represents the interests of about 400,000 gun owners here in San Diego. So, our members, our supporters, but gun owners here in San Diego, that's a huge group of people that you're taking a liberty and a freedom away from. None of the gun groups, none of the gun, membership groups like Lemon Grove Rod and Gun or South Bay or Rainbow or Escondido Fish and Game support this. Diane, when you and I met a few months ago, you represented to me that they do. They do not. That was untrue. So if you've represented that to others, please know that there is not a single gun group or membership organization in San Diego that supports this. I do want to emphasize what Mike Johnson from SD Must talked about, because he has an army of volunteers that goes out for over 15 years and cleans up the land. They've been cleaning up after everybody that uses these public lands. And months before the Gate fire, they actually reached out to the BLM and said, hey, look, this is a fire hazard, and we want to help for free. They were ignored. Now, when we met, Diane, I showed you that email chain. I showed you that the BLM did nothing, even though we had volunteers ready to go out there and clean that area up. To this day, you haven't reached out. You haven't offered to help or see what resources could be offered for these volunteers. And that's because I believe this is not about fire safety. It's about ending shooting in 50% of the available area on public lands. Where that Gate fire started, where those people were shooting, that was already illegally too close to a road. So if you shut down the Pink Gate area and you shut down the Donahoe Flats area, that would not have prevented them from shooting where they were shooting. It was already illegal for them to shoot where they were shooting. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense to shut down these areas if it wouldn't even have prevented that fire in particular. So the other thing, the first speaker talked about, when there's people out shooting, that they have to hunker down in their home because there are bullets whizzing past. Does anybody believe that? Do you guys really believe that there are people hunkering down in their home because target shooters have bullets whizzing past their house? It's untrue. It's at the very least an extreme exaggeration, but that's not true. That's not happening. If that were happening, there would be a legal investigation. People would get arrested. The Pink Gate area is miles from a house. The Donahoe Flats area, you would have to launch a bullet over a mountain to get to a house. It's absolutely ludicrous, completely ridiculous. So, this is federal land. I see the end around play that you guys are trying to do with how you have that memorandum in place, but this is federal land, and it's being managed by the feds. Please manage it rather than take an extreme measure like banning target shooting completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tina Klippinger, and I am here to speak in opposition to the closing of the Donahoe Flats area. I respect the statements of the private citizens in the area speaking to support the closure, but then also I want to represent a slightly different demographic of everyone who has spoke here in opposition. Maybe I don't look the part, but I'm a 60-year-old woman. I've been shooting firearms for over 40 years. And I'm an NRA training counselor. That means I'm an instructor's instructor, and I'm also a chief range safety officer. People need a place to shoot. They need a place to train. I'm a marksman with a rifle, and if I didn't have a place to shoot, I wouldn't be standing here today. Indoor ranges serve a certain purpose for practice and educational opportunities, but they don't replace being able to shoot in the outdoors. And like so many people ahead of us have talked about, living in Southern California, we all pay a lot of money to live here with our property taxes and our homes and just what it costs to live here. And we live here because it is Southern California. So I encourage you to please consider everything that was said today, including making the range safer. And I'm here to say that I'd like to work with all of the parties, including the residents who feel that their livelihoods and their homes are in jeopardy as well. In fairness, we had some young people from the 4-H of America. Well, we also have a program with the Boy Scouts of America within the NRA to promote safe, responsible ownership. Children don't use it. I want to clarify that. It's the safe and responsible use. That's what I am all about, is responsible ownership, and that includes cleanup after you're out on an outdoor range, clean up anything that you've brought with you. So I would encourage you to consider this opposition to the closure in a way that we can make this safe for everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That concludes public testimony on this item.
Appreciate it. Vice Chair Jacob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to hear from the Sheriff and from CAL FIRE. I don't know if a BLM representative is here today, but it's been about 8 years, 6 to 8 years, that I have been meeting with residents because of their public safety concerns. We've had the Sheriff's Department, we've had fire representative, we've had the Border Patrol that also have expressed concerns about their safety in the area. So if you could comment, please, on some of what we have discussed and how you see this issue, please.
Good morning, Supervisor Jacob. With regard to, I think probably the leading issue is that we are in a year-round fire season. Not like in probably the distant past that fire season had boundaries. When winter showed up, it rained, we didn't have those types of issues. But I think we see with climate change, and we can refer back to just last December when we had the lilac fire, or we can look back even farther to the Viejas fire started in January, consumed 12,000 acres. We are clearly in year-round fire season, and this type of proposal would serve to reduce risk and potential for these types of incidents to occur moving forward.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the Sheriff's Department, what we're talking about is 309 calls over the last 8 years. And when you're talking about a geographical area like this, we rely on the residents and the citizens of San Diego County to let us know when there's a potential dangerous issue with firearms or shooting. Yes, 94 is a heavily traveled road with deputies on that road continuously, but we're not going to stop every time when we see a shooter in that area to see if they're within their rights or they're following the law. It's a matter of very limited resources of deputies in a very large geographical area. So we rely on regulation, and we rely on citizens to let us know when we have issues out there.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate all your efforts over the years. I want to correct the record. Mr. Schwartz made some comments, some allegations of what I had allegedly said in meetings with him, and I can tell you that in any meetings I've had with you, Michael, you have totally misrepresented anything that I have ever said to you. And I have not recently met with you on this ordinance because of some personal issues, but I believe my staff has. So with that, let me just put this issue into perspective. BLM, and I don't know if we have a map of the BLM property out in this area, but there's at least 1 million acres of BLM land. Not totally. We're talking about a very small area, a little over 3 square miles, that's causing big problems, big problems. And what happens in this area, particularly, I'm talking fire first of all, will not necessarily stay in Dulzura. We know from the Cedar Fire and other fires, all we have to do is have Santa Ana winds, and a fire that starts in this area or any other area in this county in the backcountry can easily go into the coastal areas, South Bay, as we've seen in the past. In the meetings that I've had with the citizens, and again, with the Sheriff's Department, with fire officials, with the Border Patrol, and with the BLM over the years, BLM's been very involved, and I've heard some testimony about better management in this area. And I think we would all agree with that, and that's why we have the ordinance in front of us today, is so we can better manage this particular area, a small area that has caused big, big problems. And let's be clear, because I think that there is a great deal of misunderstanding. We're not prohibiting all shooting in this area, only target shooting, which has caused the problems. So the item today before the board will amend the county code to prohibit just target shooting in 2 specific, very small areas of BLM property in the Dulzura area. And it's important to note once again, as Holly mentioned earlier, that the proposed prohibition only applies to target shooting. The action does not prohibit hunting or, if there is need, to use a gun for self-defense purposes. This is a public safety issue, not a gun issue. As stated in my initial board action on this issue back in June, I'm a very strong supporter of recreational shooting. We supported the turkey hunts. We have supported the Saturday night special issue, and that was very controversial years ago. I am a gun owner, and I know how to shoot a gun, but along with gun ownership comes responsibility, and there have been target shooters into this area that have been totally irresponsible, not just from a fire risk perspective, but also from the perspective of leaving a lot of trash behind. The South Bay Rod and Gun Club, I've met with those folks. They do a great job out there, and I hope that you will expand your membership. That's an alternative. The South Bay Rod and Gun Club, over 600 acres of land where you can do target shooting safely at that range. So there's an option. It's not like we're saying no, and there's other areas of BLM land where you can do target shooting. This is, again, I'll emphasize, a very, very small area, about 3.36 square miles, as we're talking about. So over the past several years, as I mentioned, I have met with residents who live in this Donahue Flats area of Dulzura, and they've been very, very frustrated and fear for their safety because of bullets flying by. And although it was mentioned about ducking because bullets fly over your head, I have property in Deerhorn Valley. I've experienced that myself and have reported it to the sheriff, as these individuals have reported those near misses. I said at one of the meetings, if we don't do something that will prevent someone from getting hurt or a fire, and I said it pretty much this way, I don't want blood on my hands. Do any of you? And this was in the room. I would submit that to anybody here and my colleagues on the board, because there is a very serious public safety risk here of those stray bullets affecting residents in the area, as well as the fire risk. And let's not forget about that fire in May of 2017, the Gate Fire. It was accidentally started by a group of shooters near the Donahue Mountain area. That fire burned over 2,000 acres. Fortunately, we did not have a Santa Ana wind condition because it was in May, and the ultimate cost of that to the county was a little over $2 million, as Holly indicated earlier, just to fight this fire. Recently, 4 individuals pled guilty to the United States Attorney's Office for starting this fire. So in addition to the year-round risk of fire. Shooting in this area has led to the wayward bullets flying near residents and the excessive trash being left behind, as I mentioned before. In the past 8 years, as we heard from the Sheriff's Department, there have been 309 calls to the sheriff relating to shooting in this area. That's excessive, and it takes time away from the sheriff responding to other calls. So the action today to me is very simple. It's a step to reducing fire and public safety threat in the Donahue Flats area of Dulzura. And with that, I would put a motion on the floor to approve the staff recommendation. I'd also direct staff to return to the board in 1 year to report on the effectiveness of the target shooting prohibition that we're talking about today. So that would be my motion.
Thank you. Supervisor Horn? Is there a second to the motion?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay, Supervisor Roberts seconds the motion. Supervisor Horn?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, ask your question. Might affect my decisions.
First of all, I think we ought to be concerned about the public safety here. The fire is one thing, but there's 309. Have we charted those anywhere? Are they from all over? Are they from a concentrated area? I didn't see anything that, I mean, it seems like we're dealing with something. 309 seems pretty serious to me when people are concerned about getting hit by bullets.
Chairwoman Gaspar and Supervisor Roberts, that's in the area directly that we're talking about for the restriction.
Okay, then help me, because I can't tell. We got this one handout that was given to us that showed some interesting information, and it shows Highway 94, and then I go back to our charts. I'm not as familiar with some of you in this area, but I don't see Highway 94 on this, where we're designating these areas. So could you help me? You showed us an example, it's not numbered, unfortunately, like we've asked, but the gate fire impacts your slide. Is there a way for you to help show me where Highway 94 is on that, so I can coordinate the specific information that's been given to us?
If you're looking at the map, on the northern border of that gate fire restricted area or proposed restricted area would be Highway 94. So basically that northern border is Highway 94.
Okay. Do you have this exhibit so you can?
No, sir.
Can you get it to them so they can?
Also, could we go back to the calls for service for just 1 minute and ask a follow-up question, if you don't mind, on that? Are these unique calls for service? I asked for some additional information that I was not provided on whether these were unique calls for service and whether the number of calls for service also included the fire event and people calling in regarding that event. Is there any additional information you can provide regarding the calls for service? Because I know that a single day can have multiple callers over one incident, for example.
Sure. So the data was pulled per year on the calls for service. So the 309 calls, the question that we got, Chairwoman, from your staff was related to whether or not these were repeat callers. And so we counted, there were a total of 16 repeat callers who've complained about shooting-related incidents in that specific area from 2010 to 2018. 76 of the 309 total calls over the 8-year period came from 3 individuals. So 76 of the 309 from 3 individuals. 13 other residents complained during the 8-year period between 2 and 4 times. So that totals an additional 29 calls. The remainder of the calls, which total 204 calls over 8 years, came from one-time callers. That's the information that we pulled, and then also about the disposition of the calls, how they were ended. Most frequently resulted in extra patrol. The second greatest disposition was followed by will cooperate. That means the deputy came in contact with someone and they agreed to cease and desist the shooting. Other frequent dispositions were checks okay or quiet on arrival.
And then when they complained about bullets grazing through windows, I assume that the deputy would report to the home to see that and record that as part of the call. And has that happened? Do we have calls in which deputies responded and saw that there was damage to homes occurring? And then also on the fire event itself, do we know how many callers were part of that fire event?
So the specific categories for the 309 calls were reports of shots heard, assault with a deadly weapon, or report of a shooting at a dwelling. So those were the categories of calls from the dispatch that were pulled and total that 309. So they were not sites of, reports of a fire scene.
And of the calls that were made, how many visits to homes where we identified that there was damage to the home? Because I have received several comments that there were concerns in the neighborhood about bullets through windows, that sort of thing.
I don't have the total for damage to homes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you can continue, Supervisor. I apologize for the additional follow-up.
I don't know if you have this exhibit.
Your mic's not on.
The handout that you gave us is really pretty hard to read, and I'm understanding that Highway 94 is the northern edge of this fire district. Diane, Supervisor Jacob, I don't know if you can help, but I'm having trouble merging these two bits of information here.
If you find Marone Valley Road goes north and south. And if you follow Marone Valley Road up north, 94 would be up in the northern because it intersects. Marone Valley Road intersects with 94.
Well, why don't we see it on the map?
I don't see.
We don't see it on the map.
No. 94 is not on the map. It's to the.
Is this exhibit area on the map? Is it within this?
You can see 94.
No, I can see
over
that.
on the right.
Now show me where that is on here.
We'd have to get a street view because this is a higher view than this is zoomed in. So this area.
Indulge me. I'm asking you a very simple question. Can you help me figure out where? I understand there are different scales and there are different maps. It's very hard for us to read your exhibit, and I can't figure out where this is
compared
within
to that
this area.
I understand.
Yeah, we need a bigger map because 94, even though you see it over on the right-hand side of this particular map, it comes around and then Marone Valley Road intersects.
So where is it on here?
Chairwoman Gaspar and Supervisor Roberts, Lieutenant Blankenbaker patrols this area, so he'll have a better idea of identifying on this zoomed-out map where those specific roads are located. So I'll defer to him.
So just looking at the map that was provided from testimony this morning, you can't see 94 at the top of Marone Valley, but if you look to the right, top right corner of that map, you can see 94 dips down into view. So it's hard to tell, but it's probably a mile up from the very top of this view on Marone Valley is where the northern edge of 94 would be.
Do they have a laser they can point up there and show us?
Help me. I'm looking at that and show me where this occurs on that exhibit, please.
So if you're looking at the map at the top there, your
You got a laser pointer? You could,
if we have one.
Well, I could even describe it.
We're high tech around here.
I can't find Marone Valley. I can't find this.
Holly, there was a map shown during the briefing on Friday to the board aides that shows the 94. Do you have a copy of that, an electronic copy of that? Yes. Can Suzanne pull that up?
I don't see it up there.
It's attachment D with the board letter, if that helps.
The area in question is
this area here, if the mouse is reflective on the screen. So that's.
Is that 94?
No, 94 goes up like so, transitions to the north, and then is the border up.
Does Maroon Valley Road show on that exhibit?
He's got it. I think it does.
Trying to use their map.
Okay.
Here, I thought I was the only one confused.
Well, we do have someone like jumping out of his chair. Sir, do you have the answer to this question?
Yeah, I can tell you.
Ordinarily, we don't allow this, but why
I
don't
can
you
tell you
come
exactly where the 94 is.
Several residents.
No,
Good.
how about the guy that provided us the
Okay,
exhibit?
sir, thank you very
Madam
much.
Chair, it's right here in
Great.
our.
They're going
in
to
our
put it
book.
up. Thank you, sir. We actually don't need your help, but we appreciate your volunteerism.
The map is attached to the board letter, so can you please pull up the board letter?
Can you help me find this? You give me more and more maps that I'm not able to find it. Where's the guy that gave us this information? Is he here?
Where's Cliff Keller? Hi, Cliff. This is your map, correct?
Help us find this, please.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like me to stand?
I know, it's scary now,
right? And we're having great difficulty. And
You know, I think part of the challenge is there's two different regions here. There's the Pink Gate region, which is the diagonal line to the north, and then there's the region which is called Donahoe Flats, which is the diagonal region to the south. It's hard for me to see it because the map's so damn small from here, but
where is
this is...
Where does this fall on that map up there?
This is the Donahoe Flats area that we're talking about, right where these yellow dots are.
Do we have Donahoe Flats on that?
Easier to see?
Oh, it's right here?
This is 94.
It looks like to
It's
me.
not even in there?
See,
To me, like
94 runs up here.
Ask him.
So we're not, this does not address Pink Gate area. This is just the Donahoe Flat.
Can I ask you, sir, it's this map here, this area?
No, it's this area here.
Can you show me where?
Well, do you have a... It is...
I'm voting against it anyway.
I believe. See
Yeah,
this
sure.
curve here?
You can show.
This curve is this curve, 94.
Vote against it.
And this is this is a horrible map. Do you have a better quality map than a copy of a copy of a copy?
Yeah.
That's better.
In your binders, there's a copy of this map.
Here you can see. There's the South Bay Gun Club right there. And that is right below here.
That's what I'm looking at.
So it puts it up in this area.
So it's right in this area in here.
So it's not affected by any of this.
So the 94 curve here is right here?
Oh, it's this area right here. There's the curve of 94, and there it is right there. So it's this area right in here. It's not Pink Gate area, it's the Donahoe Flat area. Okay. And this is the area where all the shooting is, where these yellow dots are, in the Donahoe Flat area. Okay. And then here you can see are the residences in Dolzura who have lodged the complaints.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It makes more sense than anything that
So this is
anybody
the
else is
Donahoe
coming up.
Flat area where the yellow dots are.
Okay.
That is the south restriction. And according to the agenda today, I think that was the main topic, Donahoe Flats.
Yeah, that's Pink Gate. Yeah. Pink Gate comes right off 94.
Within the second, the southernly hatched area, go back, please? What I'm being told is, could you go back to what was just up there? Okay. The two areas that are hatched are what we're considering?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm being told that this is in the southerly section of that map?
Okay, and that's to the west of Maroon Valley Road.
And where, can you see Maroon Valley Road? I mean, the thing that you've given us is illegible. Can you see Maroon Valley Road on that map or here?
Yeah, it's the eastern border.
Okay. That's the eastern border. Okay.
And where are the houses on this map?
So the houses are on this other side, apparently, of Maroon.
Over here? Okay. All right.
Okay. I'm sorry to belabor this, but I thought this was a very good exhibit, and I think it is. Unfortunately, what our own maps are wanting in some detail. But what I can understand, this is the area here is falling. The area in which the rifle fire is occurring here is within that southerly area, and the houses are just outside of it, showing them well within this 1 mile range. If I'm reading this correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I think, did I hear you also say that a lot of the calls are originating within this zone?
Yes.
Okay. That would appear to support Supervisor Jacobs' safety concern, which I think even would override a fire concern. And, you know, what I'm hearing is that this isn't being done intentionally. It's sort of it's the shooting that's taken place that's going outside of the immediate area and carrying over into housing that just happens to be well within the range of the shooting. And it would seem to me we need to be addressing that. And even though there's maybe a disproportionate, I think you said 79 of these calls that came from a small group of people, there were a lot of other calls that came from a lot of other people. I would be really concerned. And I think if something would have happened to an individual out there, there'd probably be a lot bigger zone than we'd be looking at today than what's there. And rather than wait for that to happen, it seems to me that we should be taking some precautions here. So.
Supervisor Roberts, we have a little bit better map on the screen now so that you can see the perimeter a little bit clearer. It's still not a great map, I understand, but you can see the eastern side of that and where the 94 was on his map, that area that you were looking at.
There's 94 here.
I see 94. I'm not sure that's. I'm not sure where this piece of 94 is on that map.
It's on the east side, the little blip that goes out just slightly midway down on the hashtag part.
Arnaldo.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. It's right above the word public. Is where this little curve is here. Okay. And that's kind of what we were surmising from putting everything together. And that housing is kind of, looks like it's just to the west and slightly north of that, where it's called public. That little black line, that's B Canyon, looks like it's leading up to that housing area. Okay, I got it.
Are you done?
Yeah, I am. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Roberts is done. My turn, Madam Chair. Okay. I believe that on this public land, there's already enough restrictions. I happen to be one of those citizens who is armed, and I think one of the reasons we're a free country is because we have that ability, and that we are trained. Of course, the Marine Corps trained me, but I appreciate the lady from the NRA who was here. We need to train others on how to use weapons safely. I don't believe that anyone from this shooting has been killed in this area, right? And the fact that we pointed out that 70 of these calls came from two people, and I don't know how much in an area the Sheriff's Department has to respond, but in 8 years, in the Fallbrook area, I'm sure we get plenty of those. We have a station there. So I'm going to vote against this. I think this is public land. I think the public has a right to use this land. There are already heavy restrictions on when they can use the land and what they can use it for. So I'm just going to register a no vote. And I don't know if you want some more of my reasoning. You can come see me afterward.
Supervisor Cox. Okay, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for staff. Both the Pink Gate property and the Donahue Flats property is owned by BLM. Is that correct? And the South Bay Rod and Gun Club, they own their own property, which is not a subject to what is being proposed here today.
That's correct. What you see on the map on the screen now, the red thick line that you see was the original perimeter that was considered that, as you can see, did include the South Bay Rod and Gun Club, and that was based on feedback from the Bureau of Land Management that would be easiest to enforce because it follows roads. Upon reconsideration, after talking with members of the community who are adamantly against any type of closure, the perimeter for the proposed closure area was refined to only reflect those areas where the target shooting takes place. So it's now just the diagonal lines, which are completely Bureau of Land Management property.
Okay, so if I really believe that if we're going to implement this, there has to be other alternatives for people to target shoot. You indicated that there's other BLM properties that would be allowed. I mean, if you restrict it here, is it more likely to move into areas I guess that would be to the west, or other areas within the Gates Fire area? Or could you even try to identify where target shooting would be allowed on other BLM properties?
There are other BLM properties available. The Bureau of Land Management representative that worked on input and establishing the perimeters has said the public can go onto the Bureau of Land Management website and find where those locations are. If this ordinance change were to pass, it would be the Bureau of Land Management working together with the Sheriff's Department on enforcement of that, and target shooters would need to find other places.
So is the Bureau of Land Management, are they requesting this prohibition?
They are in favor of it, yes.
The diagram that we had provided here, and I realize this is only on Donahoe Flats. The directions where at least this diagram is showing people are most likely to target shoot are going back over towards the and the direction of the homes. Is there any way to control the directions that people are, the firing lanes, if you will, for lack of a better term? I mean, if you took the yellow dots that are shown here and you redirected them to the west, I don't know whether that creates more problems or fewer problems. Now, I understand it doesn't address the issue in regards to potential fire impact, but I guess I'm a little bit concerned that if we implement this restriction, I think we need to try to identify areas where it is appropriate to have target shooting. I mean, some people like to go out and hunt. Okay, that's certainly something that I think has been a time-honored tradition in allowable areas. Target shooting is something that obviously is done in areas that are hopefully remote, but at the same time in areas that are not going to be potentially sites for starting forest fires or wildfires. So, I don't know, can you respond to that at all, or is that something that is beyond our purview to deal with today?
Just that the Bureau of Land Management has said that the public can go onto their website to find other locations to engage in target shooting. Supervisor Cox.
Supervisor Cox, can I help with that? If you look, I'm looking at the map that's in our books, and the problem with these two areas, the proximity to 94, it's very accessible. But if you look at that, it's kind of a yellowish area, and unfortunately we don't have a map that shows the entire BLM ownership in this area, but there's over 1 million acres. And although we had requested BLM to close down these areas during the high fire risk, which we know is year-round, they closed down 1 million acres of their land. We did not want that. We did not want that. But there's a lot of property, and all we're showing here in the Dulzera area is the BLM property, but in our backcountry area, there's a lot more of the ownership, and I suggest that maybe we could provide a map of that.
Yeah, I guess I would have found that much more helpful if we had something other than just saying, well, you can get on the BLM's website and see where they do allow it. They're probably, although I think Fish and Wildlife Service does have certain areas where they allow people to at least hunt on their property. I don't know what their feeling is about target shooting, but I would have found it very helpful if we could have seen where target shooting is allowed on BLM properties and other publicly owned properties. I guess the one consolation here is that the South Bay Rod and Gun Club does have property that they own, and apparently they do a very good job of allowing the public to use it with certain regulations and certain precautions to make sure that people don't take advantage of their invitation. At the same time, they've removed vegetation. I just say it's somewhat difficult to vote on this, not knowing what other areas are available to look at the same time.
Supervisor Cox, if I could address that. The Bureau of Land Management representative that we were working with, we asked if he could recommend other locations so that we could provide that in today's meeting. He said the BLM doesn't suggest specific locations and informally suggested people go to the desert because there's less fire danger there. He suggested that there is a map on the BLM website. It's shaded in yellow that shows all of the Bureau of Land Management property where people are able to target shoot, and says that target shooting is generally allowed on all Bureau of Land Management land unless specified otherwise, and he gave 3 locations where there is target shooting is prohibited year-round, including McCain Valley, Table Mountain, and Jacumba for several different reasons, Border Patrol activity being an example, but that generally it is allowed on BLM land, but there are a few places where it is not. And he would not suggest, specific locations, but suggested the website.
When you say The yellow, you're not talking about this yellow on this map.
Yeah. Yes, it's the yellow on this map, and there's more than this. If we
that indicates Bureau of Land Management land. The yellow does on that map.
where target shooting is available.
So you're saying the public go out and target shoot on any of these areas in yellow?
This map in particular indicates land ownership, not necessarily where target shooting is allowed. So on the Bureau of Land Management website, they have a map of specifically the locations where target shooting is permitted on federal land.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. First and foremost, I'd like to see active enforcement of the many laws and regulations already on the books. One quick look at the BLM website will provide lots of information about the number of regulations that are in place, not only for shooters on this property, but also for the campers who also pose a risk on the property. Lots of rules, regulations, as mentioned, areas that are forbidden already. Lost in the conversation today is perhaps the basic fact that shooting on BLM land is a federal issue. Now, a loophole is defined as an exception that allows a system to be circumvented or avoided. In this case, BLM has the authority to regulate the remaining months through a federal legislator. I question why the proper federal process, is just being completely ignored. Instead, I'm being asked to approve a run around the proper process, taking advantage of what I would sum up as a classic loophole. If BLM wants to further restrict this land, where are they? It is their decision to make, not an overreach by this board. I simply cannot support an overreach by this board today, so I will be voting no. We do not have any other supervisors wishing to speak. We have a motion and a second on the floor. We will vote.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes with Chairwoman Gaspar voting no and Supervisor Horn voting no, all other supervisors voting aye. With that motion, this item introduces an ordinance adding section 33.104.1 of the San Diego County Code of Regulatory Ordinances to restrict target shooting near Donahoe Mountain in the Dulzura area. Your next item for discussion